Hi everyone, I'm Neil from E92 Plus, and I'm also joined today here by Stephen from Radware. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So we're obviously here to be able to talk about kind of cloud security and DDoS in particular. Do you want to give a little bit of background in terms of yourself and kind of what you do at Radware?
Yeah, so I'm Stephen Smith. I'm the Regional Director for the UK and Ireland at Radware, so I run a small team that's focused on this market.
Okay, so and in terms of from a, we've already kind of had a look at the current threat landscape from a DDoS perspective in terms of how kind of attackers and are kind of changing, and there's a real evolution in terms of how the threats that organisations need to address is kind of radically changing, and what organisations need to do to be able to protect them from a partner perspective, especially. Kind of what are the kind of key conversations that we as a partner community need to be having with our customers to help make sure that their cybersecurity posture is right, and what they need to be looking at in terms of their strategy kind of going into 2024?
Yeah, so most of the partners that we're engaged with are primarily focused on talking about zero trust.
Yep.
And there is there's a gap in the conversation around the applications and services that are facing outside of the intranet.
Yeah.
So I would say don't avoid talking about the public facing assets to customers.
Yeah.
Don't focus all of your energies on securing the intranet. Look at the extranet, and that's where we're strong.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it's definitely one of the trends that we've seen kind of definitely growing out a lot during kind of H2. That the kind of it's a very vague concept around external cybersecurity, but it's so much of the focus has been around securing users, securing the network. Obviously, the perimeter is there is no perimeter in the same way, but I think still the thinking has been a lot about your own applications, your own network, what you've got, what you can see, what you control.
Yeah.
But those external forces, whether it's kind of third-party applications that you're using, somebody kind of somebody else's cloud, other people kind of coming in, where your data is kind of ended up with, your digital supply chain, whatever it happens to be. I think that's definitely the next hurdle to be able to go across, and that concept of zero trust, as a principle, should apply to that as well.
Yeah.
In terms of how do we trust, if we think about kind of applications, if we think about customer applications that we're hosting and users coming onto it, how do we address that concept of how do we trust them as well? Because one of the things we kind of touched on earlier in the conversation as well is user experience, and it's really easy to forget that when the focus is on security and saying no. You also need to know when to say yes.
Yeah, and so traditionally, if you look at the solutions that are out there that we compete against, traditionally the focus has been on maintaining the availability of services, preventing services from falling over in the event of an attack. Where Radware really differentiates itself is not only maintaining the availability of the platform, but maintaining the experience of the user during the attack. So organizations that view their public facing or extranet facing applications and services as absolutely critical to their business, and wanting to maintain not only the availability of those platforms, but the performance of the platforms and the experience of the users using those platforms. That's where Radware has got a real strength.
Yeah, and the complexity of those applications is kind of greater than ever. It's kind of it's not just knowing the traffic and understanding kind of who's coming in to protect them, and saying no to bots, because obviously bots can be good as well as bad, and the sheer amount of third-party integrations that so many kind of applications and have to run from a kind of from a marketing perspective, or APIs that they may have. So it's increasingly complicated in terms of being able, I'm sure, to be able to understand what is good, what is bad, and be able to make those decisions incredibly quickly, and obviously automate that to be able to make sure that not just availability, but that performance and again user experience is right.
It is absolutely getting more and more complicated to understand what's good and what's bad, and the days when you could deploy a solution and then make manual tweaks and changes to that solution as the threat evolved, have gone. If manual intervention is a prerequisite in the solution that you're deploying, then you're not going to keep up with the bad guys.
No, absolutely not. And also the way that organisations are kind of more organisations are kind of building applications. Obviously, you hear various phrases. If you're not if you're not a digital organisation, then you won't be an organisation. I think there are plenty of people that probably don't fit into that yet, but more organisations are building their own apps. They're kind of either hosting their own apps, not necessarily in their own kind of on-prem or private data centre, but in public cloud. But then that gets into that area of, organisations beginning to kind of learn more about the whole concept on cloud computing around shared responsibility, which kind of often means it's not necessarily always shared. It's on that obligation. So again, the historical reliance on either cloud services or ISPs to be able to provide that protection isn't there, and there is a need to have a kind of much more detailed strategy, I suppose, in terms of how those applications are going to get protected.
Most organisations that we talk to, when we first start talking to them and exploring what applications and services need to be protected, have got no idea the breadth of applications and services that their business is utilising that need to be protected. We quite often get involved in discussions about a specific application, and by the end of the conversation we're talking about tens if not hundreds of applications that need to be protected. The core functions of the business had no real visibility into when we started the process.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the first port of call, isn't it? Having that conversation with the customer, just being able to map what the potential exposure is and what they even have.
Correct, yeah.
And I suppose one of the other thing to kind of touch on is we've discussed a lot around kind of that move towards kind of a rise in applications being the focus, but we can't also ignore the network because that's still there as well. Where are you seeing a lot of the opportunity for partners to talk to customers in terms of that that journey and that migration? And it's not moving away from on-premise, because I think most organisations are never going to be cloud only. They're going to be hybrid in some form or another. Where are you seeing that in terms of kind of where a lot of organisations are in terms of that journey from moving elements on-prem to private to public cloud, but then also still having to kind of manage a lot of kind of legacy infrastructure?
Yeah, and so that, first of all, that kind of journey is not a straightforward journey. It's kind of moving in all kinds of directions. Organisations moving from legacy applications in their own data centres to hosting applications in the public cloud, then moving applications between different clouds, then insourcing some applications again, outsourcing to SaaS providers. It's a really complex mix, and it never stops. No organisation has ever reached the destination. There's always a continuous.
It's a journey, definitely not a destination.
And in terms of the opportunity for partners, I think it's all around thought leadership. It's all about getting in the middle of the conversation and providing guidance to customers on the potential strategy and the implications of the strategy, and guiding customers as to where the potential pitfalls may lie, and helping and assisting them in identifying those pitfalls before they fall in.
Yeah. And probably finally kind of beginning to rethink what organisations this could apply to, because traditionally I think there's been probably a bit of a perception, and certainly from a budget perspective, DDoS was a bigger, more complicated solution there, and application security, I suppose, kind of generally, targeting more kind of enterprise or government. But I think we've seen that in terms of how the landscape has kind of changed, all potential elements, from a public sector perspective, could be at risk when it comes to some of the, kind of more kind of ideology or cause-based attacks. Anybody associated with it could be kind of, potential hit. And we've seen there isn't necessarily an ethical boundary, so it could even be kind of healthcare organisations as well.
Yeah.
But also, when we also talk about that kind of whole connection and digital supply chain, kind of, moving down to kind of mid-sized organisations. So I suppose that there is a real need for partners to be able to kind of really broaden out the sort of organisations potentially that need to be looking at this.
And that's why we as a business are getting more and more focused on development of partner channels. So Radware has traditionally been very strong in the top end of enterprise, and we've got a high touch sales team that engage with those enterprise customers and help to do the thought leadership conversations with those customers. Yeah. We don't scale down to below the top end of enterprise directly with our high touch team, but the requirement for our technology is absolutely scaling down, below the top end of enterprise all the way down into the mid market, and then out into public sector. So that's really our focus for the next year, is developing a set of partners that have got the ability to understand the detail of the threat landscape and how our technology enables solutions to prevent a threat, but also has the network of connections with the customers in public sector, mid-market, lower end of enterprise. And they are the trusted advisors. So if we can help enable them to be more proficient at understanding what the threats are, then we can address those markets in a more scalable way.
Yeah, and there is that opportunity for them, and obviously not just in terms of that kind of long-term kind of strategy building with helping organisations, as we mentioned, kind of on that journey, which is definitely not just a kind of short stop, but also in terms of kind of immediate threat response as well. Because I think one of the things that we see of organisations, our partners definitely want to be able to offer more of a service, but I think there are plenty of examples of where there's that you can build that out, that expertise in-house, but then also sometimes leveraging a vendor and the services that you have in terms of around instant response as well, I think is going to be critical, because as we've seen, everything changes quickly.
Absolutely.
And when you need to react, you need to react.
Yeah, so typically if we get involved in a sales cycle, under normal circumstances we're talking about 3 to 12 months of discussion with starting off with the education phase with customers and then moving through to opportunity development. If a customer comes under attack, the sales cycles can be 3 hours. We do have a comprehensive set of emergency response services which the partners can utilise, and whenever we deliver one of those emergency response services, it always opens up a significant opportunity for the partner to go on beyond the immediate emergency and sell a service. But what we're also seeing is an increasing demand for managed services. Organisations don't have the skills in-house to understand how to go about delivering a complete end-to-end security solution. The Radware solution components are only a small component of an overall managed security solution. So a big focus for us this year is identifying partners who have or are building MSSP capabilities and integrating our solutions into their broader set of MSSP solutions. Because like I said, organisations do not want to buy, they don't even want to buy a point managed service for a specific problem. They want to buy an integrated managed service that includes a whole plethora of managed security services integrated together. Yeah, because everything is connected anyway, so otherwise you're only going to bounce from potentially kind of one problem to another. And have one person pointing fingers at another person. Which is absolutely the last thing we need. So I suppose kind of wrapping up from a partner perspective, kind of where is it, if what are the kind of the trigger points that potentially they could see, or the questions that they need to ask their customers that would kind of highlight the potential opportunity and where they can work with you? I think the first thing really is I talked earlier on about the fact that when we start engaging with customers, we normally wind up talking about 1 or 2 applications, and then it spreads. But you need to start with the 1 or 2 applications. What are the mission critical applications and services that the business absolutely needs to be 100% reliable and performant? Engage in those conversations, understand the detail of the implications of those applications and services, worst case going offline, but degrading in performance. Get to the bottom of what the impact of that would be on the business, and then start exploring the history of that application, and you will almost certainly find that the customer has had performance problems with those applications, if not availability problems, and that's the that we can then use to start helping and exploring. Then we can start layering in. We've got a range of proof of value services that enable our partners to utilise those services to help customers to understand the vulnerabilities of those applications and services. So engage with us to understand how, as a partner, you can utilise those proof of value services to deliver value to your customers. All right, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. So if you're watching, if you'd like to find out a little bit more information about working with E92 Plus and Radware and possibly having a look at some of those services, getting a better idea of how you can take them out to your customers, just get in touch with us. All the contact details will be below. But otherwise, Stephen, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.